Your mind isn't broken, it's just noisy. What if the ancient Stoics held the key to quieting the chaos inside your head? Starting today, overthinking isn't a personality flaw, it's a habit. And like all habits, it can be replaced. In this video, you'll learn exactly how the Stoics did it minus 2,000 years ago, and how you still can. Imagine living with the clarity of Marcus Aurelius, unbothered by doubt, untouched by fear, free from overthinking. It's not a fantasy, it's a skill, and it starts now. Let's learn about these 7 Stoic techniques together. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation from days ago, dissecting every word, every pause, every awkward silence, as if your mind refuses to let it go? Or maybe you've stared at your phone screen for hours, imagining every worst-case scenario because someone left your message unread. No reply, just silence. Sound familiar? If so, welcome to the human experience. You're not weak, you're not broken, you're simply trapped, like so many of us, in the exhausting spiral of overthinking. It doesn't scream, it doesn't shout, but it quietly wears you down. It drains your energy, steals your peace, clouds your decisions. You can't always see it happening, but you can feel the fog creeping in, thought by thought. Modern people call it overthinking. The Stoics, more than 2,000 years ago, called it unnecessary thinking, and they knew exactly how to stop it. To them, the mind was like a garden. If you didn't carefully tend to it, weeds would grow. Worries, regrets, fears, all of them are just weeds in the garden of an undisciplined mind. But here's the good news: you can reclaim your mind. You can clear the mental fog. You can see clearly again with the help of philosophy that has withstood empires rising and falling, wars raging, and generations passing. In this journey, I'll share with you 7 Stoic techniques, not dry theory, but living, breathing practices that will help you break free from overthinking, sharpen your perspective, and walk through life with greater clarity, decisiveness, and freedom. And it begins with the single most important realization. 1. Realize what is in your control and what is not. Some things are up to us, and some are not. Epictetus. This simple quote is the cornerstone of the Stoic path. It is the doorway that leads from mental chaos to unshakable peace. If your mind is caught in loops of what-ifs, if you can't seem to stop replaying conversations, if you're stuck imagining 100 ways something might go wrong, there's a high probability you're trying to control the uncontrollable. And that right there is the birthplace of overthinking. Listen carefully. Overthinking doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. More often than not, it means you care. It means you want things to go your way. You want to say the right thing, do the right thing, avoid pain, earn respect, keep people close. But here's the hard truth, and the gift the Stoics left us. There are parts of life that will never, ever be within your control. And the more you try to control them, the more exhausted, anxious, and foggy your mind becomes. Think about it. You send a message, no reply. Your mind fills the silence with stories. Are they angry? Did I say something wrong? Maybe they don't care anymore. Or you're preparing for an interview. Before you even step into the room, your mind is racing. Will they like me? What if I mess up? How will I handle rejection? The human mind, your mind, becomes like a runaway film projector, playing out scene after scene of worry, fear, self-doubt. But here's the problem. It's not your imagination that's the enemy. It's your starting point. The moment you forget what's truly within your control, the moment you step beyond that invisible line into the land of uncertainty, other people's opinions, unpredictable outcomes, that's when the spiral begins. Epictetus wasn't trying to be poetic when he said, "Some things are up to us, some are not." He was laying out a blueprint for human peace, a blueprint to escape the storm of overthinking. He taught and lived by this division of life. What depends on me, my thoughts, my actions, my character? What doesn't? Other people, external events, fortune, fate. Every single day, we are invited to choose where we place our attention, inside that boundary or beyond it. Look at Nelson Mandela, a man locked away for 27 years, stripped of his freedom, torn from his family, branded a criminal, simply because he dared to oppose injustice. In that small, cold prison cell on Robben Island, Mandela had no control over the outside world. He couldn't change the laws. He couldn't influence the government. He couldn't predict if or when he'd be free. But he did control one thing: his response to adversity. Mandela chose to rise. He chose to learn, to reflect, to strengthen his character, to train his mind right there in the shadows of his confinement. And when the day finally came, when the door opened and he walked free, he carried no hatred, no bitterness, no thirst for revenge. Instead, he forgave, because he understood something most people never do. True freedom isn't walking through an open door. It's refusing to let hatred imprison your mind. Mandela lived what the Stoics preached. You can't always control your situation, but you can control yourself. And sometimes that's enough to change the world. Or as Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Think about that for a moment. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Legions obeyed his commands. Nations bent to his authority. And yet, every day, he reminded himself, my control is limited. The weather, out of his hands. Other people's behavior, beyond his reach. The future, unknowable. Death, inevitable. But how he responded, how he thought, how he chose to live, those were his to command. This is the first, most vital skill if you want to break free from overthinking. Learn to separate what belongs to you and what belongs to the world. Because when you stop reaching into someone else's heart, when you stop trying to predict the future, when you stop battling uncertainty, you free up a massive reservoir of mental energy. Instead of obsessing over, do they like me? You shift to, am I acting in line with my values? And that is the only question truly worth living by. Understand this deeply. You don't need to control everything. To be at peace, you just need to control what you're thinking in this moment. And from that, everything starts to change. Clarity returns. The fog lifts. You stop living in reaction and start living by reason. This is how the Stoics lived. This is how you can live. By reclaiming your attention, by tending to the garden of your mind, by pulling the weeds, worry, regret, fear, and planting seeds of clarity, discipline, and peace. But it doesn't stop there. Knowing what's within your control is only the first step. The next is action. Because overthinking isn't just about what we think, it's about the absence of doing. And the Stoics knew you can't escape this spiral of thought by thinking more. You break it with your first action. And that is exactly where we'll go next. So, now you understand the foundation. The moment you accept that some things lie beyond your control, a quiet strength returns. But knowing is not enough. The real transformation begins when you act. And yet, this is where so many people remain stuck. Because overthinking disguises itself as preparation, as responsibility, as being careful. But in reality, it's a loop, a spiral, a cage that holds you in place. The Stoics saw this trap centuries ago. They understood the more you speculate, the more tangled your mind becomes. The more you analyze, the more you freeze. If you want clarity, if you want freedom, you must embrace this truth. 2. Focus on action, not endless guesswork. Stop talking about what the good man is like and just be one. Marcus Aurelius. It doesn't get simpler than that. The Stoics believed philosophy wasn't just meant to be discussed, it was meant to be lived. Overthinking often feels productive. It gives us the illusion of progress. We replay conversations. We dissect possibilities. We try to predict every outcome before we move. But have you noticed? The more you think, the more you hesitate. The more you imagine, the more afraid you become. And in the end, nothing actually changes. The situation remains. The uncertainty remains. But your peace, your energy, your clarity, gone. Overthinking is clever. It wears the mask of responsibility. It whispers, you're being smart, you're being prepared. But it's a lie. It's procrastination, dressed up as wisdom. The Stoics rejected this way of living. They understood, you don't need to think about being courageous. You need to be courageous. You don't need to discuss honesty. You need to live honestly. You don't need to map out every path. You need to take the next step. Overthinking tries to control the uncontrollable, other people's emotions, a future that hasn't arrived, situations that haven't even happened yet. But the only thing always within your control is action. Real, tangible, present action. Let me give you an example. Imagine this. You send a text to someone important to you. Hours go by, no response. Your mind starts to race. Did I offend them? Are they upset? Should I message again? Or will that make it worse? Meanwhile, life continues. But your mind, it's stuck, looping, paralyzed. What's the Stoic response? Simple, act. Send a kind, simple follow-up. Show goodwill. And then, let go. It's not about forcing the outcome. It's about aligning your action with your values, kindness, courage, clarity, and leaving the rest to life. You don't need 100% certainty to act. You only need to be sure that your action reflects your character. The future will unfold however it unfolds. The Stoics didn't wait for perfect plans. They knew the world doesn't change when you think differently. It changes when you act differently. Picture this. You're standing on the edge of a high rock. A lake stretches out below. It's cold. It's deep. It's uncertain. You could stand there all day, replaying possible outcomes. Will I sink? Will I float? Will someone rescue me? But none of that matters until you jump. Life is no different. The longer you stand still, the more your mind spirals. The moment you leap, the moment you act, the fog begins to clear. Overthinking feels responsible. Action feels risky. But in reality, it's the other way around. Overthinking robs you of peace, confidence, momentum. Action gives you experience, clarity, growth. And don't misunderstand me. The Stoics weren't against thinking. They were against drowning in thought. There's a time for reflection. There's a time for analysis. But there's also a time to stop thinking and start doing. Knowing which moment you're in, that's wisdom. You don't need a perfect, flawless plan. You need a first step, and then a second. Clarity isn't something you wait for. It's something that emerges when you move. It reveals itself along the path, not before. The Stoics taught us to live like soldiers in everyday life, resilient, proactive, without complaint, without delay. A soldier doesn't know how the war ends, only today's mission. They carry it out fully, completely, without overthinking. And you can do the same. Ask yourself, feeling stuck, confused, paralyzed by overthinking? Then stop. Choose the simplest, Smallest action aligned with your values, and do it. Send the message, make the call, write the paragraph, step away from the toxic conversation, submit the application, stand up, speak up, step forward. It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. Because here's the truth. You don't escape overthinking with more thought. You break the spiral with your first action. But what if emotions are clouding your judgment? What if fear, doubt, anxiety make it hard to know which action is right? That's a real challenge. And the Stoics knew it well. But they also left us a tool, a principle that brings clarity, even when emotions run high. A principle that separates reaction from reason. A principle that will change the way you see yourself and the world. And that is exactly what we'll explore next. So far, we've uncovered the pillars of the Stoic way out of overthinking. First, accept what's within your control and surrender what isn't. Second, trade endless mental loops for courageous, aligned action. But here's the truth the Stoics understood deeply. Even when you know what's within your control, even when you take action, the mind can still betray you. Why? Because most overthinking doesn't come from facts. It comes from emotions, running wild, whispering lies, convincing you that your worst-case scenarios are real. And if you don't learn to master this, if you don't learn to guide your emotions, instead of letting them guide you, no amount of logic or action will truly free you. But don't worry, the Stoics gave us a way to change that. 3. Think rationally, not emotionally. Let's be clear, the Stoics weren't cold. They weren't emotionless statues walking through life untouched by feeling. They felt everything, but they refused to be ruled by those feelings. Overthinking is a skilled liar. It starts with emotion, fear, insecurity, doubt, and then it spins. It tells you silence means rejection, criticism means failure, an unanswered message means they don't care. Sound familiar? That's not reason. That's your emotions painting the worst possible picture and your mind believing the art is real. The Stoics saw this happen centuries ago, and they taught a different path, the path of reason, the path where emotion is acknowledged but not obeyed, where you feel your fear but act from clarity, where you notice your doubt but decide from wisdom. Let me tell you a story. Us. Navy Admiral William McRaven, in his book Make Your Bed, shares a brutal moment from SEAL training. It was freezing cold, pitch black. The trainees were forced to lie in the freezing mud, shivering, exhausted, their bodies pushed to the edge. Some began to panic. Some were ready to quit. And then, unexpectedly, one trainee started singing, not because he was happy, but because he chose not to surrender his mind. Gradually, another joined in, then another, until the whole group, lying in the freezing mud, sang together, laughed together, pushed through together. That's Stoicism. When you can't change the situation, you still choose your response. Not fear, but reason. Not despair, but spirit. Overthinking begins when emotion hijacks the mind. When worry, fear, insecurity dictate your thoughts, and suddenly, your imagination becomes your enemy. Small issues inflate into disasters. Silence feels like rejection. Failure feels final. But the Stoics offered a different question, one that brings your mind back to truth. Ask yourself, is this true? Is this useful? Am I interpreting this reasonably? Simple, but life-changing. A message left unanswered? Is that rejection, or is that just a person busy with their own life, unaware of your spiraling thoughts? Someone turning you down? Does that mean you're unworthy? Or does it mean they have their own standards, their own needs, their own story, separate from your value? One failure, is that a life sentence? Or is it simply information, a lesson, a stepping stone? The Stoics didn't deny emotion. They placed it under the light of reason, like turning on a lamp in a dark room and realizing the ghost you feared, it's just a coat hanging on the chair. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Read that again. Not some events, not on good days. Always, you have power over your mind. And when you claim that power, you claim your peace, you claim your clarity, you claim your freedom. Let me be clear. I'm not asking you to be numb. I'm not asking you to suppress your feelings. The Stoics weren't ice-cold philosophers, hiding from life. They felt grief, they felt anger, they felt love, they felt loss, but they refused to be puppets of emotion. They felt deeply, and then they thought clearly, and then they acted decisively. And so can you. Overthinking is a habit, a reflex, an old mental pathway worn smooth by repetition. But like any habit, it can be changed. Every time you pause, every time you question, every time you replace reaction with reflection, you carve a new path in your mind. You rewire the reflex. You reclaim control. Is it easy? Of course not. Nothing worth mastering ever is. But step by step, choice by choice, you begin to see clearly again. You begin to stand firmly again. You begin to live with conviction again. Let me ask you, what do you tend to overthink? Work, relationships, an unanswered message, a conversation you can't let go of. What if, right now, instead of spinning, you asked, is this true? Is this useful? Am I thinking reasonably? Because when you do that, when you shine the light of reason on your fear, the fog begins to lift and your mind becomes your ally again. But here's the challenge. When your thoughts are loud, when your emotions are swirling, it's hard to see clearly from inside your own head. That's why the Stoics, including Marcus Aurelius himself, practiced something simple yet powerful every single day. A habit that pulls you out of the storm of your thoughts. A habit that separates you from the chaos inside your mind. A habit that allows you to see instead of just react. And that is exactly what we'll explore next. We've come a long way already. We've seen that peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from controlling ourselves. We've seen that the antidote to overthinking is action, not analysis. We've seen that emotion is not the enemy, but obeying it blindly is. But now we arrive at one of the simplest, yet most powerful Stoic tools, a tool that can interrupt overthinking in its tracks, a tool that allows you to step outside the whirlwind of your thoughts and finally see clearly. It's ancient, it's practical, and it costs nothing but your attention. 4. Write down your thoughts to see clearly and detach yourself from them. Let me tell you a secret. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. But when you overthink, it feels like the two have become tangled together, like weeds choking the flowers in your mind. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, philosopher of life, warrior of the inner world, every single day, he sat down and wrote, not to impress, not to publish, not for praise. He wrote to clear the fog from his own mind, to examine his thoughts, to separate truth from emotion, to return to himself. Today, we call it journaling. But for Marcus Aurelius and countless Stoics before and after him, it was something more. It was a quiet act of rebellion, a moment of stillness in a noisy world, a way to pull themselves out of the chaos of their own minds and into clarity. Because here's what happens when you write. You shift from being inside your thoughts to becoming the observer of them. And from that distance, you gain power. Think of it like this. Overthinking is like being trapped inside a storm. The winds whip around you. The rain blinds you. You can't see which way is forward. But when you sit down to write, it's like stepping inside a shelter. The noise quiets, the fog clears, and for the first time, you can see. The mind has a funny way of inflating everything. A small worry becomes an overwhelming fear. A brief silence becomes rejection. A single mistake becomes proof you're unworthy. But when you put your thoughts onto paper, you strip them of their power. You shrink them down to size. You see them for what they are: words, assumptions, distorted stories. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. It's not the event that causes suffering, it's your interpretation. And that interpretation, you can change it. Writing is the first step toward that change. It slows your racing mind. It turns your invisible fears into visible words. It invites your reason back into the room. Here's how simple it can be. Step 1. Grab a notebook or your phone. Step 2. Ask yourself, what am I thinking? Step 3. Write the unfiltered answer. Step 4. Ask, is this true? Step 5. Ask, is this useful? Step 6. Choose your response. That's it. This isn't about being poetic. It's not about crafting perfect sentences. It's not even about feeling better immediately. It's about seeing better. And from seeing clearly, you can begin to live clearly. But make no mistake, this isn't just a psychological technique. It's a spiritual practice. When you sit with your mind, when you face your inner chaos, when you speak honestly with yourself, that is a form of prayer, a dialogue with yourself and with something greater. The Stoics weren't atheists of the soul. They understood there was something sacred about quiet reflection, and in the silence that writing creates. Sometimes the divine whispers, maybe not in words, but in clarity, in peace, in strength. And right now, in this noisy world, this practice is more vital than ever. Social media floods our minds with other people's opinions. Notifications fracture our attention. Algorithms drown us in comparison and distraction. No wonder overthinking feels inescapable. But the truth is, you don't have to live in reaction. You don't have to drown in mental noise. You can pause. You can breathe. You can write. And in doing so, you reclaim ownership of your mind. When you write down your fears, they shrink. When you write down your assumptions, they reveal their flaws. When you write down your anger, you trace its roots. When you write down your self-judgments, you see how untrue they are. And for those of you with faith, ask yourself, how does God see this? Is this fear real, or is it my lack of trust? Is this anger righteous, or is it my pride? The Stoics never promised that writing would make you feel better immediately, but they promised it would help you see better. And sometimes, that's all you need to break free from the spiral of overthinking. Remember this, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees them. And once you write them down, you reclaim that position, the observer, the guide, the master of your own mind. Today's challenge is simple. Grab a notebook or open your notes app. Write down the loudest thought in your head right now. Then ask, is this worth letting control me? You might be surprised by what you discover. You might find it's just a ghost in the fog, easily dissolved the moment you see it clearly. But writing isn't the only practice the Stoics gave us for escaping overthinking. There's another, a deeper one, a harder one, but also the most liberating one. It's the radical practice of embracing life exactly as it is, without resistance, without illusions, without wasting energy on if only. And that is what we'll face together next. So far, we've explored the foundation of escaping overthinking. We've learned to see the boundaries of control. We've learned to act rather than be paralyzed by guesses. We've learned to guide our emotions with reason. We've learned to write down our thoughts, to observe them, not drown in them. But even with all that, many people still stay stuck. They carry a hidden weight, the weight of regret, of if only I had done things differently, if only they hadn't said that, if only life had gone my way. And so the mind spirals. We relive the past. We rewrite reality in our imagination. We fight against what is. But the Stoics taught something radical, something most people reject. But those who embrace it, they live lighter, freer, wiser. 5. Accept the present as it is. Amor fatith, words amor fati translate to love your fate. Not tolerate it, not endure it. Love it. It sounds extreme, but buried within those two simple words is one of the most liberating mindsets a human being can adopt. See, overthinking often begins where resistance begins. We resist what happened. We resist what is happening. We resist what might happen. And in that resistance, we drain our energy. We cloud our vision. We imprison ourselves in mental loops of what if. The Stoics refused to play that game. They understood you can't control fate, but you can control your attitude toward it. Let me make this clear. Acceptance isn't giving up. It isn't passivity. It isn't weakness. Acceptance is power. It's the refusal to waste your life wishing reality was different. It's choosing to face life raw and unfiltered and say, I may not have chosen this, but I will choose my response. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled by his master, taught this lesson better than anyone. He said, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. Read that again. Don't demand reality, obey your preferences. Align your mind with reality, and suddenly, life flows. Let me give you an example. Imagine you just lost your job. Your first reaction, why me? Was it fair? What if I had worked harder? And before you know it, you're stuck, reliving conversations, imagining alternate timelines, overthinking every detail. But the Stoic response, pause, ask, can this be undone? If the answer is no, then resistance is a waste of energy. Acceptance isn't ignoring the pain. It's feeling the loss, but refusing to drown in it. It's asking, what now? What skills can I learn? What opportunities does this create? Is this the moment to pursue the path I've avoided? Suddenly, your mind shifts from rumination to possibility, from regret to growth. The same applies to love. When someone leaves, the mind fights. Why? What if I'd done this differently? Maybe they'll come back. And so the spiral begins. But the Stoics, they return to what is real. That person is gone. The sadness is real, but clinging to an illusion only deepens the wound. They don't forget, but they don't resist. They live fully, starting now. The same applies to illness, to failure, to heartbreak, to every curveball life throws. The Stoic principle is simple. Return to the present, not to soothe yourself with everything will be okay, but to ground yourself in reality. And from that grounded place, act with character. Because here's the secret. Character is the one thing fate can never take away. Fortune rises and falls. People come and go. Health fades. But who you are, your integrity, your values, your courage, that remains entirely yours. When you accept life as it is, you free your mind from the prison of should have. And with that freedom, your energy returns, your clarity returns, Your power returns. Think of amor fati like this. Life is a river. You can't control its direction. You can fight the current, exhaust yourself, resent the flow, or you can swim with it, steer with it, move with life, not against it. It doesn't mean you don't strive. It doesn't mean you don't try. It means you stop wasting time wishing the river flowed differently. This mindset may be uncomfortable at first. The ego resists it. The ego wants control. But true peace, it lives on the other side of surrender. And make no mistake, acceptance doesn't kill ambition. It doesn't make you passive. It makes you focused. Because when you stop fighting the past, you start building the future. When you stop resisting what can't be changed, you finally see what can be changed. So let me ask you, have you been fighting reality, reliving the past, resisting the present? What would happen if, right now, you stopped? Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. What if you whispered, amor fati, I may not love how this happened, but I will love where it leads me. The Stoics didn't promise a painless life. They promised a clear one. They didn't avoid suffering. They avoided wasting their minds in imaginary battles. Acceptance doesn't erase overthinking overnight, but it removes its fuel. Because when you stop fighting reality, there's less to spin about, less to analyze, less to regret. And suddenly, your mind quiets, your heart steadies, and life begins to flow. But there's another enemy of clarity, one far more dangerous than overthinking: alone. An enemy the Stoics never faced in the same way we do today. It's not emotions, it's not loss, it's not failure, it's information. In our hyper-connected world, we are drowning in it. And if you don't learn to control what enters your mind, overthinking becomes inevitable. That's what we'll face together. Next, we've walked through the deepest layers of overthinking. We've seen how clarity begins with control, not of life, but of ourselves. We've replaced thought loops with action. We've shifted from emotional reaction to reason. We've journaled our way back to perspective. We've even stared down fate and whispered, amor fati. But despite all this, there's a silent enemy that sneaks into our minds every single day. It doesn't shout. It doesn't storm in like panic or grief. It seeps in, disguised as normal, disguised as information, disguised as being informed. But left unchecked, it suffocates our peace. It drowns our clarity. It multiplies our overthinking. The Stoics, living in the simplicity of the ancient world, warned of this in their own way. But today, in our digital, hyper-connected age, it's more urgent than ever. 6. Limit information. Don't overload your mind. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a smartphone. He didn't wake up to 72 notifications, endless breaking news, or algorithm-fed content designed to hijack his attention. But still, even 2,000 years ago, he warned, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And today, we don't just have thoughts coloring our souls. We have an entire flood of other people's thoughts, filling our minds, tinting our emotions, hijacking our focus before we even brush our teeth. The Stoics taught that the mind is your final stronghold of personal freedom. When you allow anything and everything to pour in, you're not free. You're a hostage to the noise of the world. Let's be brutally honest. We're consuming too much news, too many opinions, too many comparisons, too many worries that don't belong to us. And what does that do? It overwhelms your mind. It fractures your attention. It fuels overthinking. People 2,000 years ago faced war, famine, and hardship, but they weren't subjected to the relentless flood of information we face today. They had space to think, to reflect, to just be. But us? We wake up and the flood begins. Endless news cycles, social media drama, the curated highlight reels of strangers, the panic of headlines designed to provoke fear, and we wonder why. We feel anxious. We wonder why we can't hear our own thoughts. We wonder why overthinking feels inescapable. The Stoics would shake their heads because they knew you can't shut down the world, but you can control what enters your mind. Overthinking doesn't just come from thinking too much. It comes from consuming too much, too fast, too unconsciously. And most of what you consume, it doesn't make you wiser. It doesn't make you more peaceful. It doesn't make your life better. It just makes your mind noisier. The Stoics practiced restraint. We must practice digital restraint. Here's what that looks like. Read less news, unless it directly impacts your life. Tune out the drama that isn't yours to solve. Stop filling your feed with strangers you compare yourself to. Give yourself silence, intentional, regular silence. At least 30 minutes a day. No social media, no background noise, no endless scrolling. Just you, your breath, your thoughts, or a blank page. This isn't laziness. It's not avoidance. It's mental housekeeping. It's guarding the gates of your mind, just like Marcus Aurelius did, night after night, when he journaled. We live in the noisiest era in human history, and the quietest minds, they will be the ones who thrive. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't choose what enters your mind, someone else will. The algorithm will. The advertisers will. The loudest voices will. And then, you're no longer thinking your own thoughts. You're just a temporary storage unit for noise you never intended to carry. You don't need to know everything. You only need to know what helps you live well, what strengthens your character, what sharpens your peace, what clears your mind. The Stoics didn't glorify ignorance. They glorified useful knowledge, knowledge that serves your soul, not just your curiosity. So ask yourself, is this information helping me live more wisely? Or is it drowning my clarity? Am I choosing this? Or am I being manipulated by it? When you reclaim that choice, the fog begins to lift. The mind quiets. Overthinking loses its fuel. Because here's what most people don't realize. Overthinking isn't just an internal problem. It's a byproduct of an overstimulated, overloaded, overfed mind. Reduce the noise and clarity returns. Reduce the consumption and confidence grows. This is the paradox of modern life. We think more information will make us smarter, but often it just makes us more anxious. We believe more opinions will make us wiser, but often it just confuses us. We think constant stimulation makes life exciting, but often it just makes us exhausted. The Stoics were minimalists of the mind. They trimmed the unnecessary. They guarded their attention. They cultivated silence, and in that silence, they found strength. They found clarity. They found peace. You can limit information, limit unnecessary input, limit the noise, and suddenly, the mind that once felt impossible to control, it quiets. It sharpens. It becomes yours again. But even with all of this, even with control, action, reason, writing, acceptance, and discipline over your attention, there's still one truth we must face. One truth that, if ignored, will always drag us back into overthinking. A truth the Stoics didn't fear, they used it. And when you embrace it, you'll stop wasting your life in mental loops. You'll start living with the urgency and clarity you've been seeking. That truth, it's death, always near, always, reminding us that time is short and life is now. We'll face that together in the final part. We've arrived at the final, perhaps most powerful lesson of all. We've peeled away the layers of overthinking, from control to action, to reason, to self-reflection, to acceptance, to information discipline. And now, standing at the center of it all, is a truth most people run from, a truth the Stoics didn't fear. They embraced it. It's the ultimate motivator, the ultimate perspective shifter, the ultimate tool to silence overthinking once and for all. It is death. 7. Death is always close. Don't waste time thinking about it. Most people treat death like a distant appointment, something far away, something they'll deal with someday. But to the Stoics, death wasn't a future event. It was an ever-present reminder, a companion, a guide. They understood, when you live with death close by, you stop wasting time. You stop drowning in mental spirals. You stop postponing your life. Overthinking is a thief of time. It pauses your life. It suspends your action. It trades the present moment for imaginary fears and unanswerable questions. But the Stoics ask, why would you waste your precious, limited time trapped in the prison of your own mind when life is happening now? Seneca warned us clearly, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Think about that. We don't lack time, we lack presence. We lack the courage to live as if this moment could be our last. Let me tell you a story. On September 11, 2001, amidst the chaos of the World Trade Center collapse, firefighter Joe Cirillo was buried, alive under the rubble, crushed in total darkness, breathing dust, unsure if he'd ever see light again. And in that moment, Joe said his mind didn't wander to his worries, not to the petty arguments, not to the work deadlines, not to the social drama. It focused sharply onto things, the people he loved, the things he hadn't done yet. And when, miraculously, Joe survived, he was never the same. He stopped postponing life. He stopped overthinking. He started living with urgency, with gratitude, with clarity. That's the gift death offers us, if we're brave enough to look at it. Because here's the lie overthinking tells us, you have time. Wait until you're ready. Figure it all out first. But death doesn't wait. It doesn't send a calendar invite. It arrives whenever it arrives, and that is why you must live. Now, messy, imperfect, uncertain, but alive. The Stoics didn't fear death. They used it. They placed it over their shoulder as a constant reminder that life is precious, that time is finite, that clarity comes from remembering what's at stake. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop overthinking your next step. Stop postponing your peace. Live now. Because here's the final, uncomfortable truth. Absolute clarity never comes. Certainty never arrives. The mind will always try to spin, to delay, to overthink, unless you interrupt it. Unless you remember life is happening now, and your time, it's running out now, and you're overthinking. It's just fear dressed up as logic. The Stoics teach us you don't need to control everything to see clearly. You don't need all the answers to act wisely. You don't need to feel ready to live fully. You just need to begin. So let me ask you, honestly, what are you overthinking right now? Is it a conversation, a relationship, a career move, a risk you've been too scared to take, a dream gathering dust on the shelf of someday? If this was your last day, would you choose to keep thinking or finally act? The choice is always yours. Overthinking isn't a personality trait, it's a habit, and habits can change. The Stoics gave us the blueprint. Distinguish what you can control. Focus on action. Let reason lead, not emotion. Write your thoughts down. See them clearly. Accept reality. Amor fati. Limit information. Guard your mind. Remember death and life now. You don't have to overpower your mind. You just need to see it clearly, like Marcus, like Epictetus, like every person who chooses wisdom over worry. You can't control everything, but you can always control how you respond. And that is enough to live with clarity, with decisiveness, with peace. Now, one last challenge for you in the comments. Share what you tend to overthink the most. Is it work, love, fear of failure, regret? Share your story. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to break free from their own overthinking spiral. If you found this helpful, if you want more content grounded in timeless Stoic wisdom, like, share, subscribe, and check out the next video. It will help you go even deeper into how philosophy isn't just theory, but a daily practice for living clearly, boldly, and free. Before we part ways tonight, I want you to slow down, just for a moment, wherever you are, sitting, lying down. Maybe your eyes are already growing heavy. Let's breathe together. In, slow, steady, and out. Let the tension go. This has been a lot to take in. Philosophy isn't just ancient words written in dusty books. It's a quiet reminder that your mind, your peace, your life belong to you. Overthinking doesn't define you. It's just noise. And like any noise, with time and practice, it quiets. You've already taken a powerful step by simply being here, by reflecting, by choosing to see your mind more clearly. Life is unpredictable. People will misunderstand you. Circumstances will change. There will be joy and pain, beginnings and endings. But underneath all of it is you, your character, your response, your ability to return again and again to the only place peace has ever lived, within. The Stoics weren't superhuman. They struggled, they lost, they grieved, but they trained their minds. They practiced seeing clearly, they practiced living simply, and they practiced letting go. And tonight, you've practiced that too. So as you rest, let these words settle, not as demands, but as gentle reminders. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to control everything. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. All you need is to breathe, to return to this moment, to remind yourself you are enough right now, not when you have all the answers, not when life feels perfect, but here, imperfect, uncertain, fully human, and still worthy of peace. You've planted a seed tonight. With care, with patience, with practice, that seed will grow into strength, into clarity, into the quiet confidence that you can face whatever life brings without drowning in thought. So for now, let go. Let the world keep spinning. Let your worries dissolve like fog beneath the morning sun. Rest knowing you've already done enough for today. And tomorrow, you'll rise. You'll choose again. And little by little, the weight of overthinking will lift. The fog will clear, and the world will become a little less overwhelming. But for now, just be here, be still, be free. Sweet dreams.